Queer Film and Arts Fest was invited by the LGBTQI plus staff network from the Suffolk University to curate or co-curate this LGBTQI plus History Month program of events and films. This afternoon, you're going to have the chance to watch March for Dignity. March for Dignity is a documentary directed by John Eames. In the film, we follow a group of LGBTQI plus activists in Tbilisi, Georgia, while they organize the country's first Pride March. This brave group faced the harsh opposition of the powerful Georgian Orthodox Church, the extreme far-right movement, and the government, which has led to a large number of attacks on the queer community. The film portrays the current situation in Georgia, interviewing members of the Pride Committee as well as detractors. The country faces a historic moment where Georgians need to choose who they want to follow and where they want to be. With a Russian activity legislation against queer people, or with a wider wall fighting for progress and human rights. The Tbilisi Pride organizers are not only fighting for the right to protest in the city, but also to make themselves visible in their country and region, as they know that public opinion is the beginning for change. After watching the documentary, you will have the chance to join the Q&A with John Eames, the director of the documentary, Mariami, who is one of the activists that you will meet in the film, and also you will have the chance to meet two members of the LGBTQI plus staff network. They are Darragh Briscomb. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing the surname wrong. Darragh is a mobile and web development student. He's also Darragh is also involved, in activism and has a interest in queer activism. The other member who will join the Q&A is Sebastian Cordoba. Sebastian Cordoba is a lecturer in psychology and a researcher in gender and sexuality. Obviously, Sebastian has an interest also in activism and LGBTQ+. After the Q&A, I will remind you to fill up some surveys that we will be very pleased to receive at Fringe, but the survey is not ready, so we will send you that survey in a few days. So apologies for that. And I believe that now you are going to enjoy the documentary. So I see you later. Thank you.
So I think we're all back from the movie, from the film, from the documentary. I just want to, talk a little bit about my experience watching the film, and then we'll be directing some questions for both John and sorry, Mariana. So, watching the documentary, I went through a lot of emotions, which I'm sure most of us watching also experience, a sense of anger and fear and joy and excitement and nevertheless hope. So this event is really to celebrate LGBT History Month. So it highly relates to what I would call history in the making. Typically we know the histories of the Stonewall liberation and gay rights movement from places like the US and the UK, and those kind of histories have made a dent in the histories of LGBTQI plus narratives. So I think the film really has given us a great insight into the lives and the struggles of LGBTQI people in places like Georgia or Turkey or Armenia. And it's interesting to me as a researcher that most of the research that comes out on gender and sexuality and LGBTQ identities tends to have a kind of US or UK perspective, such as the queer perspective that then gets used to to be applied to the rest of the world, and it might or might not always make sense in the context of different locations. So that was just my little spiel, you know, some of my kind of feelings watching it. Also, someone like me who was born in Colombia, which is a quite Catholic country, and is a country that has also struggled with LGBTQI discrimination and stigmatization. It has, and it still does, which also still happens in places like the UK. So I want to start by asking John one question, just kind of general. Well, first of all, thank you for letting us show this film. Again, it's so many emotions, but how did the project come about, and kind of what is your relationship with this community, and how did the collaboration kind of merge and start?
I had no prior connection to Georgia at all, but I had been sort of following I was interested in doing something around these kind of new and challenging prides around the world. So I was definitely kind of keeping an eye and researching on those kind of in different countries. And then Tbilisi announced their pride in around about February, I think, of 2019. And I just couldn't stop kind of reading about it and kind of learning more about the country and the current kind of queer empowerment there that was building, and how the community was really starting to sort of become more empowered there. And it just kind of all fit the bill to kind of be something I wanted to be part of and to kind of document. And I reached out to Georgi initially, and we chatted and asked if I could make a film, and he agreed. Yeah.
Great. Had you worked on any other kind of pride events in other places in the world?
No. Kind of, I guess, always had the luxury of attending quite easy and fun, enjoyable prides to go to, right? You know, in my lifetime, London Pride, and I used to live in Manchester, was, you know, very kind of celebratory prides to attend. And so a big part of it was definitely kind of connecting with the sort of raw activism of it a little bit more, which we're fortunate enough to kind of maybe, you know, I have a feeling of sort of losing sight of that, or not sort of highlighting the activism of Western prides. You know, so I was definitely keen to sort of highlight the importance of pride and just kind of give it a more global focus, I guess.
But what was it like to film these moments, to capture this? You know, I was really kind of staggered by the moment in the drone and the flag. You know, I thought that was such a significant moment, that in my view, maybe I'm just jumping over some kind of fence. It kind of felt like this so-called idea of throwing the first brick, which may or may not have happened. Did it feel like that? Was it really kind of, did it feel as significant as the viewers felt? Because it gave me the chills.
Yeah, it felt like a really daring idea, and was definitely a little bit scared about people being chased down, finding out where the drone had started, and, you know, follow it. Also, you know, the flag was it's quite difficult to operate a drone with a flag waving in the wind. It turns into a kite essentially, so it's really, yeah, so it was scary from that point of view. If it falls, if it, you know, something drops out of the sky, has an issue, then yeah, so it was scary. And I was shooting down on the ground, and my cinematographer was operating the drone. And so I felt like the only person there that knew what was about to happen. And so that was quite a nice feeling, just sort of like waiting around, waiting for this kind of hopefully incredible moment. And fortunately it all worked out. So I guess Mariam probably knows more about kind of the sense, you know, how that related to the media and kind of what that did for you in that moment.
How did it feel for you?
Sebastian, thank you so much for the like first remarks you made, because it's quite important. We were actually discussing a lot before we announced Tbilisi Pride. Was this the thing, we were doing it just because it's done in the West and it's cool and we like it, or we really feel that in our context it's needed? And the reality of Georgia is that we have quite advanced legislation and policies like on the paper, but we see that the attitudes in the people, it's really aggressive, and it's kind of impossible to implement this legislation, this anti-discrimination policies and stuff. So we really saw that visibility and like really kind of having dialogue with people and appearing and like let people see like who we actually are was very important for at this moment in Georgia. I think it really had important results, this campaigning that we had for the entire year, and the movie, which is really important that it's documented all of this, how it happened. And we are really glad that this kind of documentary exists. Yeah, it was very difficult year and emotional. We were opposed by different groups a lot, and we had office attacks and death threats, and it was quite intense. It was especially difficult for, of course, queer community, because this kind of increased visibility unfortunately brings increased number of hate crimes and incidents, and it was quite challenging for everybody. But we kind of, the part of the community, not everybody obviously agrees that this in the long-term run, it's important and it needs to be done. Like 10-15 years ago, I'm always saying this, people would say that Georgian gays do not exist. They just would not admit that this is only Western phenomenon. We don't have gays in Georgia. But now it's changed, and what we felt that was necessary, okay, we exist, but who we are, like what we are like, and like to have this kind of connection with people. And that's why we did this, and we are trying every year to like use our rights of peaceful assembly and freedom of expression to kind of fight like against homophobia. And yeah, the movie is quite good and emotional, and I was watching it with you guys, and it made me cry. It was really, it's really emotional. And yeah,
I mean, speaking of this idea of community and the fact that, you know, queer people and LGBT people have existed for forever, and is not this kind of new invention or new kind of linguistic proclamation that all these people are saying, oh, I'm queer, I'm trans, I'm non-binary, I'm gay, I'm lesbian. And so it gets portrayed as this kind of new idea, which it isn't. It has existed for millennia. And I did have some questions for you, particularly around this idea of visibility and community. You know, there was in the film, part of the Pride event was this play that was kind of staged and that had to be done kind of secretly somewhere. And I think that gave me such a sense of, or a glimpse into the LGBT community in Georgia, something that we don't get to see very often. So I was wondering if you had any more kind of comments or insights into what does the queer community look like in Georgia, and how did you get involved in it to begin with?
Of course. Yeah, I've been involved in activism since 2015. By that time, I just felt that I needed to do something, especially after the events in 2013, which you saw, huge violence, and I was there. And it was like, for me, the point when I decided that I want to commit to this cause. Of course, myself, I'm the part of the community, and I really felt that my knowledge, my skills, and my privileges that I have, I should use to somehow improve this really, really difficult situation for queer people in Georgia. And yeah, we had several activities during Pride Week. It was the international conference, a theater play, and the March for Dignity. and all of them were quite important, but especially the march, because it was actually planned to be organized in the public space, and usually this is the most controversial thing in the country, because they usually say you can do indoors in private spaces whatever you want, just stay in your bedrooms but don't come outside. And we are constantly over the years fighting for the public space and to be the part of, we don't want to be, we refuse to be excluded. And this is unfortunately very difficult, because unlike maybe many years ago when the activism started in different countries, it was different. It was just a lack of knowledge in people, and you would talk to them and provide information and like change attitudes. But now it's extremely difficult because there are so many organized hate groups and well-financed and coordinated, and there is, sometimes you see that the people, like the majority of people, it's not the people who come out in the streets to attack you, but it's very like motivated groups, like far-right groups and church, who have their own like very hateful agenda to like not to let you talk to people and show up. So it's very challenging, especially for activists. We don't have family support. Like it's to be LGBTQI activist in Georgia, you are so marginalized, like even it's difficult for you to find jobs if you get involved in this. And yeah, everyone, like my family, it was so difficult, and relatives, they keep like really, my mom was crying all the time and asking me to leave the activism and not to do this. And it was, it's quite difficult for people who are trying to make a change. But fortunately, I think things are changing. And we also in the movie, you heard about the nightlife and kind of, actually in Georgia, I don't know how it happened, but this raves and techno culture and underground, it's quite well developed. And this is the like kind of safe space for queer people so far. But what we wanted, Tbilisi Pride, was to bring the movement to the queer people out of nightclubs and like to the street, to the public space, and to the daylight. This was the concept and our kind of aspiration, because we've been long enough like underground, and we thought that we could pick up and be more public. And but it's very difficult for people even to participate in the march and to be the part of activism, because 90%, I would say, queer people that I know and work with, they have not done coming out with their families, like our co-workers. It's only few people who have managed to do that. So people are afraid of outing, and it's the cycle, which is very difficult to break, unfortunately, but we're trying, and more people are joining us. Like before Tbilisi Pride, I would say I worked at other human rights organizations, queer rights, and that we could not find people who would agree on participating in the video and campaigning to show their face and speak. And Tbilisi Pride, it was so empowering and kind of big thing for community members, that we had like nearly 40-45 people who were in the videos, actually like speaking and showing their face. So it was huge for us. And yeah, there are small changes that we see, and hopefully it will continue the same way.
Yeah, that's great. And hopefully films like this can change the narrative and the rhetoric a little bit. This question is for both of you. You know, what has the reaction been since the release of the film? What has the conversation been in Georgia? I know that it gathered, or the march itself gained a lot of media attention and visibility, which is, really the goal. But, what has been the reaction since the release of the film?
It's not screened in Georgia yet.
Right.
Obviously, pandemic, and there's not as many kind of film festivals and things like that it can be a part of. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. I think the only time there's been screenings, and then We Danced had its Georgian premiere. It ended in a number of arrests, and somebody was assaulted quite badly, and so
I'm sure they know about it, right?
Yeah, I mean, lots of people are waiting for this movie in Georgia, and yeah, I think we will show them soon the movie. And actually, I think it's the big value of this movie is that John actually managed to meet with these far-right guys personally and to take the interviews. It's like very impressive, and yeah, I think let's see how they will react. I really don't know. But, I hope that it will be, all of this will go peacefully and there will be no major incidents around the movie.
Yeah, I think the film's impact can hopefully be more, you know, like your work in Georgia is incredibly valuable, and I hope I can just bring a little bit more light to getting people to engage with issues in a lot of countries that we just don't hear much from when it comes to this kind of activism and human rights in general. So, you know, I think that's only my small contribution to it, is to be able to kind of just bring a little bit of focus. And one thing I did learn from this film is that I really, well, from making this film, is that I really want to organize big groups to go and attend these events, you know, to attend these prides that are under threat, and to put a lot more pressure on the security element and to heighten the visibility, you know. So I would like to start organizing 20 or 30 people to apply to Tbilisi in future for, you know, when Pride is safe and allowed again, to partake in those kind of things, you know.
I do have a couple more questions, but I was wondering if maybe Jorge or Tara have any questions themselves.
Yeah, I have a couple. Firstly, thank you both for coming, and thank you for sharing this wonderful film. It really inspired me to like continue what I'm doing, because although it's on a smaller scale, I like helping people, and being able to implement that on my campus makes me feel really happy. So knowing that it scales up so well is really inspiring and motivating. So firstly, I wanted to ask John, how did you get the interviews with the far right people? Because I'm so intrigued as to how you managed to approach them and got them involved.
They're very willing. You'd be surprised. For a long time, Sandro, the guy with the bald head, I was trying to find like a fixer for a while. I was chatting to a few journalists that had interviewed him and things like that. And I was saying, oh, you know, I wanted an introduction to just hopefully kind of get on his side a little bit. And one just ultimately said to me, just message him on Facebook, he'll probably reply. And sure enough, he did. He said, call me up and we'll arrange a date. Yeah, I don't know, he was willing. And then one day during the Pride, the kind of week or two before Pride, we knew that those people were hanging out in the park every day at Vera Park. And so we went down. I had a translator with me that day. It was terrifying, you know, it was, but they were just happy for someone to talk to them. And when your views are that sincerely held, you're willing to, you know, espouse them wherever you can, I guess. So I think they were just happy for a platform. I definitely got quite lucky. I think a few contacts fell through, a few kind of had second thoughts about it. I think at the protest outside the government building 8 days before Pride or whenever it was, someone was arrested that I was supposed to interview in the next couple of days. I forget his name now. Who's the young guy with the beard and the big muscles? Who's that guy? I'm sure he's sublimating his sexuality somewhere, but that's another matter. Yeah, and then he pulled out. So, but overall, I got really lucky. They were just quite sort of happy to talk to me, and I think they knew I was from London, so they knew that was a different, you know, we had a different attitude on average. I don't know, they didn't question if I was queer at any point. They didn't seem to, maybe they assumed not. I wore a cap the whole time and just kind of, I don't know, played it a bit straight. I don't know, but they were nice to me. Yeah, strange.
Yeah.
And then for both of you, I just wondered what you've like learned from the experience of like that first Pride, and how are you taking it forward into what you're doing next?
Yeah. Very good question. So we learned a lot. First of all, that we cannot trust government fully, and we don't have the hope in them, because at the last day, like, they were like, we are not gonna bring out police and we are not gonna protect you at all. So they might just leave you alone anytime. And we are thinking what could be the ways to, like, go into the streets more or less safely without having the government support. It's very difficult, and there is always debate about it, whether like risking lives and health of people is worse for it. But I think yeah, resistance and like not giving up the public space is very important. And whoever is ready and feels really like has realized the risks and is willing to take this risk should be allowed to do so, because it's like yeah, it's our decision, and we think that it's important, and we should not be taken away these rights. And we are definitely going to try to organize Pride Week this year as well in summer, and let's see how that goes. Yeah. Also, we learned that the church, even though they kind of changed their narrative and they are not directly opposing, like saying going against you, they still mobilize people and they still coordinate with far-right groups, and they are quite motivated to not let Tbilisi Pride or kind of LGBTQI activism happen in Georgia. And we really we want to kind of start the dialogue with church and to work with them, and we made some moves, but unfortunately they are refusing to talk to us, and so far the situation is frozen. But right now in Georgia, it's a very difficult situation. We have huge political crisis. There was elections, and the opposition thinks that it was kind of yeah, it was rigged, and they refused to enter the parliament. So it's very complicated situation, and it's always important in Georgia who is in the power, like which team, because it could change a lot. Like some ruling parties could be really friendly, like queer friendly, and kind of cooperate and try to make at least some small steps, but sometimes it could be really difficult. And we are now waiting what will happen, who will be in power and prime minister and so on, because we are directly depending on that. And it doesn't look good, unfortunately, but we hope that yeah, our activism and our dedication will pay off.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I was just kind of inspired by the kind of nuance of the organization was just so impressive. Like, to be that close to just, you know, on the surface, I think, you know, oh, we're going to have a march, you know, like it or not, that's what we're going to do. But it was just your kind of, you know, strategies and concerns for security and all of the things that you had to kind of go through was just really fascinating and you know, like a privilege to be that close to, I suppose. Yeah, and I guess like you learn quite a lot about, it is just a small number of right-wing organizations, you know, these fascist groups who have one sole purpose, and it is to undermine you know, progression of queer rights in Georgia. That is their whole, but it's only a small group of people, and yet they're able to dominate the narrative in the media and to really hold things back. And I think that's really interesting that we just don't get, you know, you would assume, oh, it must be a really homophobic and transphobic country then. But I think it is changing around those people, yet those people, and we see here in, you know, right-wing media here, the same people get platforms to kind of, you know, to you know, have very privileged platforms to put across views that aren't held by the vast majority of people, you know. I think that was quite an interesting thing to kind of really think on how it can really dominate a small country as well, you know.
The media is very important, of course, and unfortunately we see that like the Georgian media gives the space to everyone, to even like the people who are declaring that they are neo-fascists, and they want you to sit with them in the studio and have a debate. And sometimes it's completely crazy because we even don't feel safe around them. And the media situation is very difficult, and they are but actually the Georgian March, the far-right group that was shown in the movie, they used to be informal group, just like and they became political party for 2020 elections. They changed their organizational structure and participated in elections, but we saw that they couldn't even gather 1% of votes in the elections, which was very important for us, and we were really happy about it, to see that Georgian people, voters, they don't really support them. And their main election topics and narratives was anti-LGBT and xenophobic and racist, and they didn't get support. So this gives us really big hope that they are marginalized group, and we could like, yeah, be better and maybe change the situation. But also like LGBT community and activists, we are also remain very marginalized within the country, and it's difficult to our narratives to be strong, especially in the situation when we don't have any people, any politicians or musicians or artists who are out and who are talking on this topic. We don't have anyone except few activists. So it makes really hard.
Yeah, it always kind of makes a difference when there's a big person leading the kind of image and perception. I do some research on LGBT identities and communities, and I have noticed how, you know, when someone such as Sam Smith comes out as non-binary and starts using they, them pronouns, you know, it can actually really mobilize the community and the activism and the research around. I think, Jorge, you wanted to.
Yeah, I just wanted to, because Marvin is wrote a text remarking what you, John, were saying at the very beginning of the Q&A. And it's basically just, you know, like you are coming from London and Manchester, went to Georgia to do the documentary, and then you, Sebastian, were saying Stonewall is kind of like, you know, everything started from there, which is not true, because I'm not English like you, I'm Spanish. So when Stonewall happened in Spain, we were in a dictatorship. So you couldn't even say you were gay, basically. So so for example, for me as a Spanish person, Stonewall it happened in the late 70s, early 80s, when in Spain there were the first protests, and in Colombia it was, you know, another Stonewall, let's say that, and in Georgia, let's say that now this is the, you know, I'm saying Stonewall, but it's not the Stonewall, but it's like, it's the beginning. So, and I think it's really important to see that each country, each community had a different history, and not because in the States LGBT people can get married, everything is done, or because it's not true. Like in Spain, that was possible, I think 20 years ago, and Spain was coming from a very dark past, quite similar to Georgia, I will say. So there were, you know, after the dictatorship, the far-right movements and parties that were still there, but they were a minority too, but they were making a lot of noise. So I think that is important to remark, because there is always a, you know, a hope, or a hole with light at the end of the tunnel, that I want to believe that, you know, it will be possible to be able to go to the street in a few years, to have a protest and a parade, and both, and no one will, you know, will feel aggressions. There is some questions. I'm just going to read them out loud. One is for you, Mari, and it's, do you think you will want to stay in Georgia if the situation improves?
Yes, definitely. I would like to live in Georgia for the entire life of mine and to be there with my family and friends. And I don't want to leave and flee the country because of homophobia. It's very difficult, but still, I think that I'm very much needed there and I want to live there, and it's my home country and I want to contribute to improving the human rights situation. So definitely, yeah, I'm just doing my studies for a while now abroad, and I'm going back soon and I'm going to continue the fight with my fellow colleagues, pride in pride and partners and so on.
Thank you. There is another question, I believe is for both of you, and is, did you hear any distinctive stories from any individuals about their experiences living as LGBT person in Georgia?
Okay, just quickly on that. I have been spending time with quite a few people who I wanted to kind of have as personal characters in the film. But then as sort of cancellations happened and, you know, it kind of got more complicated, that kind of had to shift. And so those people may not have been able to attend the event and what have you. So I didn't get a chance to kind of tell the story in that way. I do remember meeting an Iranian man in a bar there, and he was telling me that he can't get a visa to travel to anywhere in the EU. You know, he can't get a visa to travel to anywhere, to even Turkey, I believe, to anywhere where there would be like a safe space for him. And this was like the only country that he could actually visit as a tourist and kind of enjoy a safe queer space. And so I think that was really fascinating. It is kind of in that region where it kind of, and I know a lot of Armenians come to Tbilisi at the weekends and what have you as well, right, Mariam?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, it's actually we have a few people, refugees from Iran and also Chechnya. We are neighboring. We have the border with Chechnya, which probably you've heard. It's a very difficult situation. They are literally hunting down gay people and either imprisoning them or killing. So we had a few cases when they managed to cross the border and seek the asylum in Georgia. So I would say that in our region, in Caucasia, it's Georgia is definitely much more democratic compared to other neighboring countries, especially when it comes to LGBTQI rights situation. The experiences are very different of queers in Georgia, and as it was asked, and I think that of course the lives of transgender people, as mentioned in the movies, is very, very different from other LGBTQI community members. They are marginalized and they are excluded from every possible space from workplaces and so on. And we are, especially during COVID pandemic, this situation hit transgender people, especially sex workers, the most. And we are trying every day to work out like what can be done in the situation, but it's so difficult because transgender people are not welcome anywhere in any space, and it's it's very disappointing. And also when we were planning Pride, we were meeting with trans community a lot, those who work in the streets, in public spaces, because this kind of activism and visibility brings some danger to them. And we were really trying to plan this in a way to prevent and mitigate any risks that could potentially harm them. And it was very difficult. And but we had meetings, and we kind of asked police to be there, present every day during Pride Week, because to avoid any like attacks and stuff. So yeah, it's quite different experiences of queer community members in Georgia.
I wanted to ask you, John, a question that I couldn't at Fringe, and it's about the document. It's basically about writing the documentary. like, did you write down like like a screenplay for how you wanted to do the documentary? And it's also regarding what Darragh asked, like, were you expecting to have that welcoming by the far right movement? Like, they were quite pleased to be interviewed by you. Like, how were you planning? How were you writing the screenplay of the documentary? And second, how many minutes of of unused material do you have that you couldn't use, either because some people that they took part in the interviews at the end, they were like, well, actually don't include it, or you couldn't find a space for it, or it was not matching with blah blah blah. So I just want to know a bit more about that.
Yeah, I was hoping to kind of I interviewed Nia, who runs the only queer bar, although there's another one right now, Success Bar in Tbilisi. I think I interviewed her for maybe about 90 minutes, but unfortunately, as it all kind of, like I say, there was a lot of cancellations and rescheduling and postponing the event, so it kind of took a different form, and so some characters didn't fit. I interviewed an HIV activist there as well, who again, just wasn't going to be seen again in the film, unfortunately. So it just kind of unfortunately didn't work. And one or two other people too. Yeah, I got the most out of the far right people that I could. But yeah, there was a solid 3 or 4 other characters that didn't make it. I wanted to kind of straddle the two, the far right groups and our activists and I guess general members of the community as much as I could, and kind of have it sort of coalesce around a big event, but it ended up taking a different form, so I had to kind of tell the story a little bit differently. Yeah, there's a few hours of interviews of characters that you never see, unfortunately. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, in the case of interviewing Sandro from Georgian March, I just had to very delicately ask him, very sort of just let him enjoy talking about himself for about an hour. I didn't really want to listen to any of it, but I knew he had a bit of a reputation for ending interviews. I'd seen him end an interview with the BBC at some point after a few minutes, as soon as they asked a contentious question. So I kind of had to very delicately just pretend I was interested in him for quite a long time. So that's a long interview, and there was some pretty crazy assertions in there that just don't make much sense, accusing Pride organizers of basically scamming money and just wanting to kind of have a job out of this, and they're not actually even gay, that they're just straight people just trying to kind of have some money from George Soros, as So yeah, there's a lot of stuff in there that's just a bit wild, but
yeah, I imagine. Maria, I mean, what's the best way for the students and for the people that are watching us now, what's the best way to support the group in Tbilisi at the moment?
First of all, I would ask all of you to follow us because in social media sometimes we need help of different kind, whether it will be donation or it might be like to post something and maybe ask the politicians who represent you in different councils or parliament to kind of say something about the situation in Georgia. Actually, we had during Tbilisi Pride a member of UK Parliament from Scotland speak about Tbilisi Pride and LGBTQ rights situation in Georgia, and it was very important. We used it really well in our advocacy. And yeah, and also you can just come to Georgia if you can, and then be the part of Pride. It's very important for us and it will be helpful. Yes, and now we are trying to operate emergency fund to support the most vulnerable within our community, because our government does not take into consideration the needs of LGBTQI people in this crisis, and we are depending on ourselves, and we don't have much money, so we are trying to fundraise and so on, and just follow us and Tbilisi Pride and get in touch, and we are really willing to get any help that you can offer, and maybe also plan some cooperation projects together. It will be very interesting.
Thank you.
I'm just conscious also of the time. I know that we scheduled the event for up to 7:15. There might be some questions coming into the chat, and a few more perhaps from Facebook. So I think there might be enough time for 1 or 2 more questions, and then we can kind of wrap it up. Jorge, do you want to pick one?
Yeah, sure. I believe this is for Mariami. How do you deal with the hate aimed towards you because of your gender and sexuality? Also to you too, John, when you were in Tbilisi, but I believe this is more for...
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, it's one of the challenging parts of the work I do. And I would say we were thinking a lot about physical security and cybersecurity and planning all of this, but we did not pay enough attention on like burnout and emotional security and psychology. And it really affected us in a bad way. I personally had terrible burnout and depression. I had to go through treatment, and I even, at some point, I was thinking to quit the activism after the Tbilisi Pride events, but fortunately it didn't happen so. It's the burnout, the mental health issues comes along with the work we do, and it's quite difficult to cope, but we try. There is no other way, but we try to support each other, our team members, Tbilisi Pride team members, and just community, to stand together and to go through this. And we have some services, very few, but we have some psychologists who provide free aid for queer community, and we try to use it as much as possible. The family situation was especially challenging. This is the biggest, I think, most traumatic and hurtful for most of queers in Georgia. The lack of support and the problems within the family, it's really traumatizing. But I've been trying to talk with them and to go through this, and it has been okay so far. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess I don't have much to add to that. I guess I did get a little bit nervous, as you know, I was wondering if I was going to become a face at some point during all of this and become known to people. And you know, sometimes if I was leaving queer spaces late at night or something, I was a little bit nervous if I would become a bit of a target. But I had nothing. I know, not even, doesn't even scratch the surface compared to you know what you put yourselves front and center of, you know. So
I would just add that it was really comfortable to work with John, because he was always so patient with us. Like when he was asking for interviews, I was always running away, like around between the ministries and media and community meetings, and I never had time. And he was like always very supportive and calm, and
sometimes there's a bit like, what's going on? Everyone just seems to be running around. And then like a few hours later, I'll be like, oh yeah, we've had death threats all day. And I'm like, okay, makes sense. I'll continue to try and be patient. Yeah.
At first, when the cameras appeared, it was kind of, you know, awkward, like to work around surrounding with cameras. But then like nobody remembered cameras. We were all like working and like talking and going around, and John was just there. And it was really nice of you to be patient and very, and John is so calm and so friendly, and sometimes it was really helpful in this crazy situation, because all of us were really excited, and kind of yeah, emotional. So the process of movie making, it was quite interesting for me, and I will remember it for many years.
I wanted to add something else, and it's I've been talking to John, and John told me that the film is going to start the international trip quite soon. So for everyone who is watching us now from wherever you are, it will be good to talk about the documentary, definitely, and also about the group of activists in Georgia. So tell this to your friends, family related, and if you have someone that runs a cinema or a cultural center here in UK or in Europe or anywhere in the world, talk about the documentary, because it has to be seen, and the more that we talk, the better for the documentary, of course, but mainly for LGBT people in Georgia. So yeah, I think that was important to say too.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
There's a last question that is relevant to this. What are the social media links? Where can people learn more and share and continue to follow your work?
It's basically our username is Tbilisi Pride everywhere on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Just type in Tbilisi Pride and you will easily find us. But I can also type it maybe in the chat. Sure.
We can perhaps share it afterwards in
Yeah,
the link in the description.
Yeah, we'll
No.
send.
No need to stress about that. Oh, perfect. Yeah, we'll send it around. I just wanted to, thank everyone again for your time. This is the first time we've collaborated at University of Suffolk with Fringe, so that, thank you very much for making this possible. Thank you to John and Mari for taking some time to speak to us, and this has been really delightful and hopefully fruitful. I know that we have some students who are watching, and is there any last thing you would like to say before we conclude?
Yeah, I currently live in Brighton for a few months, and if you are here, if you happen to be in Brighton, get in touch, let's meet and talk, and I would really be glad to to make new friends and contacts, and it will be really nice. So thank you for watching the movie and supporting, and good luck to you all.
Thanks. Yeah, and I just hope if it's any small inspiration for this film to encourage people to engage with their community more and to kind of become a little bit more active in any small or large way, then yeah, I guess my work is done if that happens. So yeah, it's really nice to be part of these things.
Sounds good. Jorge, any last?
Thank you for watching the documentary and for staying in the Q&A, and of course thank you to the LGBT network community and group from the Suffolk University. It has been a pleasure. So thank you from everyone at Fringe, and thank you Mariami and John for seeing you again. It's really nice. That coffee and beer is still there.
Yes.
When we can do it, and hopefully we can do it also now with Sebastian and Tara all together, or online. I don't know, maybe together not yet. But yeah, thank you very much. And I really think programs like this and events like this are needed, and it's really good to to spend a Friday evening doing this, for many more Fridays actually like this. Yeah.